Such sights to show you.
Hello! Hi. We're in a new dark age of horror reboots, I reckon. Much like the nightmare that was the early 2010s, we're seeing old IPs dusted off and released with shiny new actors and effects. For real, the number is staggering. Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Exorcist, It, Blair Witch, Scream, Evil Dead, The Invisible Man, Chucky, Candyman, The Ring,
Texas Chainsaw, Dawn of the Dead, The Hills Have Eyes, Amityville Horror, Last House on the Left, Friday the 13th, and A Nightmare on Elm Street, My Bloody Valentine.
They're doing Audition? Okay. And you'd better believe there are so many more on the horizon. One I don't see talked about much was the return of Clive Barker's other iconic work, the absolutely gruesome Hellraiser.
What is it you pray for?
Now, despite a considerable build-up over the years and a bit of a cringe-worthy controversy over casting, it landed on Hulu with little splash or fanfare. But we're going to take a look today. We're going to see what it does right, what it does not so right, and how it's kind of the perfect encapsulation of the issues with the modern horror revival. So, let's get started.
Oh, no tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering.
Now, make no mistake, there have been some good ones. But an unfortunate trend in horror revivals is this act of taking a property that, to this day, remains a unique experience, exploring fascinating, untouched ideas, and stripping them out for more run-of-the-mill horror tropes. Netflix's Texas Chainsaw wasn't a grindhouse exploration of horrors that could occur in the areas that society turns a blind eye to. No, it was Jason Voorhees in the desert, slashing gentrifying millennials.
Try anything you cancel, bro.
Recently, Exorcist Believer removed a lot of the rumination on faith and where you go after all explainable options are exhausted, in favour of doing a big coexist spirit bomb exorcism at the end.
I didn't actually witness it, you know.
Why not?
Because I'm not a member of the damn patriarchy.
And oh god, and Candyman drops its exploration of psychology, memetics, and the power we collectively give stories through fear in favour of turning them into a slasher fighting for Black Lives Matter. Ugh.
Candyman, the original or requel? Both.
Wrong!
Again, it's that act of taking something iconic, and Hellraiser is iconic.
Who are you? They call me Pinface.
And representing it in a more corpo accessible way to modern audiences, a redundant reworking of timeless classics, leaving things feeling pretty lackluster, to be honest. Yet, we're supposedly in the era of quote-unquote elevated horror, some kind of golden age. But what we're actually getting are very standard affairs with extremely light commentary just sprinkled on top to elevate the material. Oh, horror's totally deep now, guys. It wasn't before, but I fixed it. We're experiencing this weird oxymoronic situation where they're trying to appeal to as many people as possible. They're trying to remove edges that might turn people off, while still getting that praise for being complex and current.
I'm gay!
4chan and Reddit.
And I hate to say it, I hate that this was the case, but Hellraiser 2022 does the exact same thing. But looking at what it does and what it scrubs away reveals what made the first two films such standout horror experiences. So, Hellraiser 1987 versus Hellraiser 2022. What exactly did we lose in translation? So, I want to get some stuff out the way to begin with. I mentioned before the controversy that brewed as the film was being made. As details started to emerge, some irrelevant complaints started to grow, complaints that still dominate the conversation, but are not what I'd consider actual issues and aren't actually what we're here to talk about. Now, of course, the big one was the recasting of Pinhead, or the Hell Priest, to use his canon name.
Who you calling Pinhead?
For 18 years and 8 films, the legendary creature performer Doug Bradley played the role iconically. Anyone following his stint has big shoes to fill, and quite the overbearing shadow to escape. Like trying to get anyone other than Robert Englund to play Freddy Krueger, it's a losing battle. Their actor is too tightly intertwined with the role to untangle.
I'm your boyfriend now. Boo!
Now, does Jamie Clayton do as good a job as Bradley? No. But she's fine. It's a different, less interesting take.
You will know our finest gift. Oh yes. We have such sights to show you.
A Hell Priest who's more wry than the perverse cruelty or righteous anger the original had.
I want to hear him confess himself. Then, maybe... But if you cheat us, we'll tear your soul apart.
I think you need that personal voice to come through when playing such an elaborately designed character, least you risk becoming secondary to the makeup, which I feel Clayton does. But she does a better job than the first 2 times they tried to recast in Revelations and Judgment.
Amateurs.
Of course, there's also the fact that this time Pinhead is a woman. No strong feelings on this. The original book version of Hell Priest was always androgynous, and while this isn't going the direction the book did, there's that precedent of playing around with his gender. It's not as if they made Michael into Michelle Myers, the Shapehead. A bit of a cheap marketing gimmick? Sure. But after 2 failed attempts at recreating Doug Bradley's iteration, I'm not against them attempting something new. I'd be fine if the sequel kept her. I wouldn't be upset if they tried someone new. Branching from that, there was also some disappointment that the film was set in its own continuity. New Pinhead, sure, but no Kirsty Cotton, no Frank, no Julie, no female Cenobite. Oh, but Chatterer's here.
He's just standing there, menacingly!
I actually applaud them for just starting fresh. Not only is the original fine and doesn't need to be remade, but I'm kinda sick of how modern horror revivals treat legacy characters. Laurie Strode, Sally Hardesty, Chris McNeil.
We've met before.
Is no one else done with the whole lead character's life has fallen apart between films? The whole bringing them back as a grumpy old mentor for a new fresh-faced star. Hell, they did it in Scream with Dewey, of all people.
Come on, get it together, Dwight.
Stop that! You're Dewey! So, yeah. Last thing in the world I wanted was for Granny Kirsty to roll up in a truck and be all like...
Cenobites. There's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Nah. Draw a line under it. Leave it alone. Start something new, for the love of God. And our final point of contention was the decision to use CGI. And I get it. The originals were amazing feats of practical effects. Prosthetics, matte paintings, animatronics. If you watch with a special effects eye, you'll be amazed at what they were pulling off in 1987. I believe that Frank's resurrection is still the benchmark that all artists should be aiming for when doing practical effects. But, you know, we can't be blind to the context the film was made in. Not only is CGI just the standard now, even for big blockbusters, this was made with the budget of a direct-to-stream film. A big release, as far as streaming goes, sure, but still not a theatrical release. Instead, I prefer to look on the bright side and be grateful that the film has as many practical effects as it does, despite the limitations. Sure, they look wonky at times, but we could have gotten 2010's Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm cutting them a break. Like Pinhead, it could have been worse. But If all of that is fine, it's all passable, what isn't? What's holding the film back from being as great as that original release? Well, as I said in the beginning, it's all about the content. For my money, the single biggest issue with the reboot is how it's a much more typical horror slasher experience. Now, that's normally something you could stomach if you were remaking Friday the 13th or, even Halloween to an extent. But like the new Exorcist, it just feels wrong to do that to a film that was so atypical, that legitimately, not just through lip service, did a really good job trying to elevate the genre, because behind the kills and the gore is an exploration of human nature. Saying the film is about BDSM is like saying Candyman was about race. It's surface level reading at best.
I am the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom. Without these things, I am nothing.
While Candyman examined the power of fear and superstition, Hellraiser is about how addiction and obsession wears at one's soul. And while Kirsty is our lead, the film is more Frank and Julie's. How their addiction to carnal pleasures and instant gratification erode their moral boundaries.
You're stuck in a loop of short-term dopamine rushes.
Hell, it's certainly not about the Cenobites, the poster childs for the franchise. They're in the film for all of 10 minutes. If Candyman was the embodiment of the urban myth and folklore, then the Cenobites were a physical manifestation of unbridled lust, a hyperbolic extrapolation of Frank's need for greater and greater highs.
It's never enough.
Swooping back in at the end of the film to punish both him and Julia's unrestrained hedonism.
I am wounded!
And for as extreme as the film is, there's that universal message in there for everyone. Maybe that's why this idea of modernizing it for a modern audience just rubs me the wrong way. The message is as relevant as it's ever been, with social media, modern news tactics, phone games, sex apps, and NFTs. There's a lot to be said for how bombarded our brains are with instant gratification, and how that can corrupt one's mental health.
If something's addictive because it's fun, that's one thing. But this is just blatant Skinner box manipulation.
The steps to unlock the box are unmistakably suggestive and sensual. And there's definitely an argument to be made that sexual content is at its peak coverage. You really can't go a day without seeing it somewhere, especially if you use Zitter or YouTube.
Come! You bitch! Come on! Ah! Fuck! Come on! I have anxiety.
We're all familiar with the term whale, corpo talk for a customer with so little restraint they will put themselves into poverty just to get that win. Frank Cotton, the uncle, is a whale, often paired with the imagery of rats, cockroaches and maggots. He is a being searching only to feed. Apropos of this, his sexuality is often paired with an oral fixation, and even his murders take on this weird sexual edge as he pulls a perfect cell to literally feed on his victims. In fact, he lets go of his one chance to escape the house. His downfall is his blind lust for new, depraved experiences.
It's Frank. It's Uncle Frank.
No.
You remember?
No!
Come to Daddy.
Get the fuck off of me! Daddy, no!
Daddy, yes!
And Julia, the stepmom, definitely follows in Frank's footsteps. We see her slowly devolve and degrade, her moral boundaries crumbling across the runtime, all in pursuit of the pleasure Frank gives her.
Anything?
Anything.
From cheating on her husband, to no killing, to some killing but not a husband, to fuck it, I mean, whatever. People willing to do anything, hurt anyone, to get that hit of dopamine, which in this context is sexual pleasure. We should all strive to instead be more like Kirsty, to find fulfillment with what we have and control ourselves to a point.
Okay, stop. I'm not gonna be able to stand up.
So lie down.
Could you not do that, please?
Not to say one should be prudish or repressed, I mean, far from it. But the difference between them is evident. Now, I'll admit it, it does get pretty schlocky at the end, but it has its own fun. Kirsty fighting a puppet is memorable. and it doesn't detract from what came before. The difference is the original has explored its themes and has finished, and is just wrapping itself up in a fun way. So, when we're introduced to the lead in this reboot, I actually felt it was a very promising sign. Riley is the lead of the 2022 reboot and is a recovering drug addict. The possibilities that opens up when playing with these themes are endless. I mean, the idea is kinda taken from the Evil Dead remake, and we'll see that borrowing elements from other reboots is an issue with this film. But the real problem is they do nothing with it. They plant this seed and they never let it grow. It's further perfectly summed up in what I consider to be the core of the film's issue: the changes to the Le Marchand configuration. If the Cenobites represent what addiction does to a person when uncontrolled, then the puzzle box that summons them is addiction itself, given physical form. With promises of pleasure beyond human comprehension, many unfortunate souls are lured into solving it and meet a grisly end. I mean, it writes itself, right? Damning yourself in exchange for the promise of pleasure. In the original, it's used for Frank's violent sexuality, but it fits drug addiction like a glove. I mean, I dare say, almost even better. It's part of what makes the box such a good universal metaphor. Except, the film's not about Riley using it, or even being tempted to. Her drug addiction is ancillary to the plot to be generous, a thematic relevant character trait when it really should have been a major pillar for the narrative. While I praise the film for trying to do something new, in execution it's the bones of the first film with ideas from other movies thrown in for good measure. Instead of honing in on Riley, we're mixing in Frank and Dr. Chenard from the second to make this new villain, Voight. Like Frank, he solved the puzzle box at the start, seeking new realms of sexual pleasure. This backfires, and he's trying to undo the effects throughout the film. Like Dr. Chenard, he's attempting to circumvent how the box works through proxies, only to be taken and turned into a Cenobite himself. It's all familiar territory, but executed in a more slapdash manner. Compared to when Frank solves the box, he's taken by the Cenobites to their realm, subjugated to things we can only imagine, and returning as this lump of flayed flesh. We follow him piecing his body back together with each kill he does with Julia. But what's really so awful about him is he hasn't even begun to learn his lesson.
No, don't mourn him. He was dead long before we ever touched him.
I apologize for nothing!
He wants his body back, sure, but a big reason why is because he's so goddamn horny. As soon as he has his dick again, he gets to it, skin be damned. As a criticism for excess, you couldn't ask for a bigger creep. Voight, on the other hand, was given this device on his back that frequently tweaks his nerves, so he's in constant pain. He's now tricking people into solving the box, sacrificing them to, I guess, get enough stamps on his Cenobite loyalty card, so he can meet them again and get them to remove the device. He's not killing to continue his pursuit of unrestrained sexual fantasy. He's actually learned his lesson and just wants to undo it. I mean, I would.
You reject our gift.
Heck.
Your gift.
Heck.
No! Take it out of me!
The crux of his plan is what I think sums this all up. The changes to how the Le Marchand configuration works. In the reboot, it's very straightforward. You solve the puzzle box, you die. If 10 people die, the Cenobites appear. Not so in the original, it's a bit more purposeful than that. A person has to willingly solve it. They have to be seeking what the Cenobites offer, and then they get what they asked for. This is how it ties into addiction.
It is not hands that call us. It is desire.
There are touches of the Lovecraftian, no doubt. The existence of something bigger than ourselves lurking beyond our perception. Though, while Lovecraft's work often depicts its characters running from this truth, their fragile sanity and perception of reality at risk of shattering, the characters in Barker's work are often running headfirst towards it.
It's yours. It always was.
This idea of consensual transcendence is a key reoccurring theme in his work.
Be my victim.
Unlike in the reboot, where they're either running from it are desperately trying to backpedal. I loved how Kirsty not willingly using the box in the first film was a big point of contention and a major plot beat that saves her life. There's this great scene in the second where she does willingly solve it again, not out of a lust for pleasure but to talk to Pinhead, resulting in this great battle of semantics.
I didn't open the box!
Didn't open the box. And what was it last time? Didn't know what the box was. And yet we do keep finding each other, don't we?
But in the reboot, you solve it, you die. Hell, if you get blood on it, you die. Less something that represents the levels of depravity humans can reach when uncontrolled by desire, and more evil cube that kills people. Annabelle, if she was a box. This isn't the fucking Marvel cube, guys, there's a bit more to it. I also wasn't the biggest fan of Voight being able to just pay for a mansion that could steal away the Cenobites. It takes these huge, unknowable entities and makes them a hell of a lot more known and small, especially when considering the whole sacrifice X number of people and we'll make you a Cenobite. It's just way too video gamey and oddly corporate for Leviathan. You're in my downstream, but if you get people under your downstream, then you can get promoted. I mean, who made this system? Angels to some, demons to others. That line was the core appeal of the Cenobites. Why Pinhead stood out from the crowd. Here, they're just demons. To everyone. Not Cenobites, but the off-brand Poundland version we saw in Cabin in the Woods. And to return to Riley, once again, the lead is an addict. The lead is an addict. The Lamarchand configuration is addiction. This should write itself, but that element of the plot is unfortunately not engaged. There's never any wiggle room for Riley not to be altruistic, the good lead. She never uses it to fulfill any desires. Even the one time when she stabs her murderous boyfriend is portrayed as completely the right thing to do. It's not about revenge, it's about saving an innocent life. And even then, they do the whole, whoops, I fell into it, oh, yo, it's not really her fault. To return to those core themes, what if she used the box as a way to placate her addiction? What if she starts using it on people who deserve it, at first, but then slowly devolves into using it for her own pleasure? Like if we had a Hellraiser film where a more morally grey Frank was the lead, rather than having an echo of him in Voight. At least it'd be something other than a very paint-by-numbers, whittling down the group horror story. We start with the usual quirky gang, and one by one they get offed by the evil monsters. Oh no, the boyfriend was evil the whole time. Someone saw Scream 6.
It's a bummer it's me.
Because as is, the core themes are muddled and unclear, the lore is dumbed down. I touched on it briefly before, but on top of everything else the original film was doing, there lies a really messed up family drama at the heart, very reminiscent of Penny Dreadfuls. There's a touch of Sweeney Todd in how Julia lures men up to their death. Just a much more layered feature than the remake is. Because of all of this, the film just feels a bit hollow, a showcase of special effects and some recognisable monsters, but not much more. Which is never something you could say about the original.
Well, here's my guess. I did it!
Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention what sets this remake apart from the other direct-to-DVD sequels, outside it being better, and despite my complaining, it is better. Is the involvement of the original creator Clive Barker, something a lot of fans will say elevates the picture by itself. Now, he wrote the original book and then wrote and directed the original, but only produced this reboot. So there's that to begin with. The extent of his input is unknown, but it can't have been that extensive. Instead, the film was directed by David Bruckner, otherwise known as the daddy of the VHS series.
Welcome to the show.
And then written by a whopping 3 people, one of which is everyone's favourite, David S. Goyer. But even if Clive Barker was involved more, I don't know. I can't say I was a fan of his official novel follow-up either.
What the hell is this bell? Try reading Murakami, you blockhead.
Besides, I'm weary of ever giving a creator a blank check for praise just because they did stuff you liked. Ridley Scott going back to the Alien series didn't help. And James Cameron stepped in to endorse the worst Terminator film ever made. But that was you too! I'll admit it, Stephen King's done a lot of work I enjoy, but I'm not gonna pretend 99% of what he puts out isn't complete garbage. The film is the film, end of the day, and while this isn't an insulting follow-up,
I mean, Jordan Peele fucking rules. Obviously.
It's a perfect example of following trends and missing an opportunity to do what all these bad revivals keep pretending they're doing. Elevate the material. You can either do that, be The Lighthouse or Skinamarink, or you can be a popcorn spook flick, accessible to all, consumed and forgotten, but you can't be both. God, the Five Nights at Freddy's film was so trash. But live and learn. The series is back and I can't hate that, and I will be looking at what it does next. There is always next time. And I'll see you then. Remember to stay spooked.